Great American Scream Machine is the classic wood coaster at Six Flags Over Georgia. This historic ride just celebrated its 50th anniversary, and over the past few years, it has gotten a near full retrack. So is this coaster riding better than ever, or is it still on the rougher side? Find out in this review of Great American Scream Machine. This ride was designed by Don Rosser, John Allen, and William Cobb in collaboration, having elements found in each of their rides, and it was built by Philadelphia Toboggan Coasters. When this ride opened back in 1973, it was the world's tallest, fastest, and longest roller coaster. While these records have since been passed by countless coasters, including several at Over Georgia, Scream Machine still looks imposing. This rides a long L-shaped layout that runs over the water at points. Then the back end of the layout runs along the water park, giving it an added sense of scale because it towers over everything else back there. The ride also looks great too. Many older wood coasters were painted white to preserve the wood. Today, wood can be treated prior to being built up in a coaster. This is why many modern woodies are brown, and why some classic woodies have had their support structure slowly change to brown over the years. But to Over Georgia's credit, they kept this ride's iconic white look even after the recent retrack. Then the floorboards are red, and the running rails are blue. This gives the ride a patriotic look, which makes sense considering this coaster is Great American in its name after all. The coaster also leans into this with the ornate queue building adorned with nearly a dozen American flags. I would not be surprised if this was once the coaster's main entrance, but today, the entrance is over by the Sky Coaster, and then you head down a ramp to this queue building. Here, you will find a long series of switchbacks. Thankfully, I have never had to wait in these, nor do I believe people typically have to. I have always gone straight down the ramp into the station, and I have visited this park on holiday weekends too, no less. This ride has always been a near walk-on for me. If it does have a line and you use the Flash Pass, it is worth knowing you are routed up the exit. Which seat you get may be contingent upon the employee. I've seen riders get to choose their row, other times they are funneled to a specific car at the operator's discretion. In the main queue, you are free to select any row that you'd like. I would recommend avoiding a wheel seat or the back of a car. For years, this ride was notoriously rough. Six Flags recently completed a multi-year refurbishment on this coaster. They retracked the entire layout over the span of a few years, finishing in the spring of 2022. The coaster is fairly smooth in the very front now, and this also happens to be my favorite row on the coaster. Even the second to back is tolerable, but the wheel seats all have some very jarring valleys. For much of its life, Scream Machine ran 3-bench PTC trains. These are typically found in older wood coasters. Additionally, the ride used to have glorious buzz bars. These were single-position lap bars that rested a good foot above the lap of most riders. This meant the airtime was more pronounced. But these were retired after the 2017 season. When Georgia Cyclone closed and transformed into an RMC hybrid, that ride's trains were repurposed on Scream Machine. This brought 3 changes. First, these were 2-bench trains that could articulate more easily. The ride would still have 2 trains and hold a max of 24 riders per train. This train change is why the air gates, which were never redone, don't quite line up with all the rows anymore. They were designed with 3-bench trains in mind. Second, the restraints are now far more restrictive. You still have a seatbelt, but the lap bars are individually ratcheting and will rest across your lap. I definitely preferred the buzz bars and their added freedom, but it's not too surprising Six Flags would want to do away with these. A lot of corporate parks switched away from single-position lap bars for reliability reasons over the past 2 decades. Thunderbolt at Six Flags New England is another classic woody in the chain that had its buzz bars replaced by individual lap bars. Thankfully, Scream Machine has retained its low 42-inch height requirement though. I imagine this is the first wood coaster for many kids in the area because this type of ride typically has a 48-inch height requirement. The third change was that a trim brake was added on the final bunny hill. The Georgia Cyclone trains were navigating the layout a bit faster, so this was needed to slow the ride down at the end. Once you're checked and dispatched, you turn out of the station. This turn is comically bumpy. It doesn't hurt because you're going so slow, but it is so weird to see a gentle section like this so rough. But that can be explained by the fact this is one of the only parts of the ride that was not touched in the recent refurbishment, and I would not be surprised if it's still the original wood. You then climb the 105 or 32 meter tall lift hill. To your left, you get a sweet view of Blue Hawk. To your right, you get a bird's eye view of the Hurricane Harbor Water Park. Once at the top, you head down a 9-story plunge. It is a straight drop, no negative Gs, but it does build up the speed you need to complete the layout. Next comes a giant L-turn. The entry into this element has decent floater airtime up front, but it doesn't quite deliver elsewhere. It's followed by a tame turn and an airtimeless drop. You then fly over back-to-back bunny hills. These hills were smoothed out in the recent Retrack. The first one used to offer bouncy airtime up front, but I did not get any airtime in my recent rides. The second one used to have a strong burst of airtime up front. There's still airtime there, but it's more like solid floater now. This element was never nearly as good in the back. Those riders still get a tiny pop of airtime at most at least. Then comes the far turnaround. The entry delivers an okay airtime pop for those up front. The unbanked turn gives some laterals. Then the resultant drop delivers a decent burst of airtime for those in back. The return run starts off with 2 more bunny hills. These were also smoothed out in the refurbishment. The first one has some bouncy airtime up front, but there's no airtime in other rows. The later one lost the bumpy airtime altogether and no longer has any airtime for anyone. Next comes another L-turn hugging the inside of the first. The front gets no airtime into the element, but the turn has some fine laterals, and the resultant drop is a good pop of airtime for those in back. Now this airtime pop used to be even crazier. It used to be a super abrupt moment of ejector airtime until the 2022 season. The final few hills run over the water, just like the start of the ride, and it is a nice touch. You have a bunny hill and a tiny speed hill. The recent refurb removed the trim brake, but there still isn't too much airtime here. The bunny hill is an okay pop of airtime up front, but you won't come out of your seat further back in the train, nor will anyone get any negative Gs on the speed hill. Then you rise into the final breaks. There's a nice head chopper as you dive under the covering, and until recently, this slowdown was brutal. You would slam to a full stop. Riders would visibly be thrown forwards and then jerked against the seat back. It was not comfortable. The refurbishment adjusted this deceleration. You now come to a near full stop, but the train subtly continues to move forwards, which fixes the whiplash issue. You then return to the station, ending the 3,800 feet or 1,200 meters of track. That is a lot of length for an out-and-back coaster with a single pass. So what would I rate the Great American Scream Machine? I would give this classic Woody a 5 out of 10. This is a fine wood coaster. I love its look and history, but objectively, there are better Woodies out there nowadays. That being said, the recent work made this ride tolerable in many rows, and there is still some airtime to be had, even if it may be a bit less than before because of the restraint change and the smoothed out hills. Then I also love this ride's location along the water and water park. Purely looking at the ride experience, I sort of wish Scream Machine had been RMC'd instead of Georgia Cyclone. I actually preferred the latter. I thought it had a more interesting layout and some really powerful airtime in the back car. However, I understand why Six Flags decided to keep the more historic ride intact. Further, I'm glad they were willing to perform such an extensive refurbishment to keep the ride running strong for many years to come. As I said earlier, this is one of the first major coasters for many locals because of the low height limit. So those are my thoughts on Great American Scream Machine at Six Flags Over Georgia. What are your thoughts on this old PTC wood coaster? Are you a fan of this ride and the refurbishment? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, I would appreciate it if you gave this video a like, and you considered subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canopy Coaster. Thanks for watching.